All right.
Okay, we'll get off the phone. All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are we live?
We are.
Recording?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. And then get Phil and Laura Lynn in there.
Yeah, I am going to get that. Phil, Laura Lynn.
Nice. Welcome. There's Phil.
Hi, Phil.
I
Yeah.
got Laura Lynn in there. Nice. Okay, well, I got everyone. We have all our panelists here ready to go now. That's fantastic. So just wanted to take a minute and welcome you all. Welcome the panelists, welcome the attendees, those who are watching. This is going to be recorded, so there will be the option to download that recording and get that. So we appreciate you taking your time today. We started this panel months ago when we started talking a little bit about what AI in education is going to look like. And I first had talked to Samuel and Eric, and then they looped me in later to Laurelyn and Phil. And then, of course, also AI Jane, who is visiting us also today to talk a little bit about what it means to use AI in an education type of setting, how students are using AI today. And this is kind of eye-opening as far as all of the different things that students have access to that teachers may be aware of, may not be aware of. We know that teachers are beginning to start looking at AI. And so each one of these panelists has experience in the field of education, instructional design, how people learn, how kids learn. So this is going to be a very enlightening event. I'm sure you're going to learn a lot. So glad that you're taking the time to be here. At first, I just wanted to take a minute and have each person, each one of the panelists, just spend 5 or so minutes just talking about who they are, what they do, what their background is. And then, of course, we also have a Q&A session. We have a Q&A section. So if you have questions, you can put your question in there. And as different questions come up, we will try to get those answered. It may not be right while we're talking, but we will try to get to them as we go through this. So first, I'll just go ahead and hand this over to Eric Goodman. Eric, if you want to go ahead and take a few minutes, introduce yourself, talk about what you do.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Appreciate it. So, Dr. Eric Goodman, and I am a somewhat recovering academic, I guess you could say. I got my PhD at the University of Colorado at Boulder and was a professor, spent over a decade as a business school dean, and then an equivalent number of years as a chief academic officer, VP, provost type roles at different universities. And so, from a perspective of AI, I think I just want to back up a little bit just from an education perspective. When we think about education and the history behind education, going back to thousands of years, and what used to happen with in Greece with Socrates and Aristotle and Plato and people like that, in terms of the type of education that occurred, which was really more questioning and conversational. And you can think about what information existed thousands of years ago. There wasn't that much. So it was easy for somebody to basically know almost everything, at least what they thought we knew. And with the rate of information doubling at a rapid pace today, there's just so much more information. And so when you fast forward to the needs coming out of some of the models out of Prussia and education systems and in industrialization in the US a couple hundred years ago, the need to really have, really more so in the last 100 years, a way of mass producing education and what that looked like. And so as I think about the opportunity for us, I've always viewed technology as an enabler. And you can think back to like the printing press and different innovations over time and how it's changed the nature of the world. When you think about technology, and I think there are many things that I've seen from the conversations I've been involved with. I think back, I was a dean. My first role as a dean was in the very late 90s, where I was overseeing some business programs. And even back then, there were conversations about, do we let people use these things called programmable calculators? Is that cheating? And what does that look like? And the evolution of that. And I've been involved with a lot of technology programs, the development of that, got involved with online universities in the late 90s before there were some of these learning management systems that were out there. There was one I used at a university. IBM had a system called Learning Space, and I can remember involving a faculty member in that platform and getting her to learn about it. And then we went on to launch several online universities with different organizations over the years, and programs in cybersecurity and mobile app development and things like that. And then I had the opportunity to lead the College of Business at Western Governors University. That was well over a decade ago. And I think that really helped set the tone for some of my thinking about education and the nature of education today. Because WGU, many of you probably don't realize it. And type in the chat what you think. What are the largest universities in the US? What are the universities that come to mind? I'd love to hear from our attendees. What are some names that come to mind in terms of large universities that are serving a lot of people? And Western Governors, if you haven't heard of it, it is a competency-based model. And the name was derived from the Western Governors Association. There was 19 governors back in 1997 that came together to say there's going to be a point in time where the idea of higher education is out of reach for the middle class, and just based on the cost of healthcare and roads and taxes and all these things. But I see some good guesses in there. I see a lot of the big name schools. People are typing in. But actually, Western Governors today is the largest university in the US. Most people may not recognize that. Almost a little over 174,000 students as of the end of last month. And then when you look at the other top universities, you've got Southern New Hampshire, Grand Canyon, and the typical universities you would think about, particularly those that have campuses, physical campuses, are well beneath that in terms of their size. And I think I point that out largely because Western Governors recognize not only the cost, but also the inefficiencies around the educational model, where everyone learns differently. You know, they start at different places, they have different skill levels, different experiences, different backgrounds and types of learning styles and everything else. And so how do you meet somebody where they're at? And probably one of the biggest challenges is we measure learning based on seat time historically at most institutions. And so I want to just caveat that because I think AI gives us an opportunity, and we'll certainly get into it more as we go into our panel and some of the other discussions. AI opens so many new doors in terms of how we can actually personalize the education experience. And I think back to, Benjamin Bloom and some of the taxonomies there, or Grant and Teehee, and backwards design, and starting with the end in mind. What does learning really look like? And one of the things Benjamin Bloom talked about was the 2 sigma problem, where when you look at a classroom, typically, you got 20% of your learners getting to the point of mastery, versus if you can have a mastery-based approach or a tutoring sort of style, you can get that from 20% to 90%. But how do you solve that at scale? How do you individualize instruction? And that's what the promise of AI really allows us to do. So with that, I'm excited to have an opportunity to learn with the other people in the panel today, and learn from you as well as attendees. We welcome your questions in the Q&A again, and look forward to a robust conversation about the role of AI in education. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Phil, or thank you, Eric. I appreciate that so much. It's good to have you here. I'd like to go ahead now and let's have Samuel take 5 minutes or so, introduce you and what you do, and we'll just kind of continue down the line here.
Very awesome. Thank you very much, Rob. Thank you, Eric. As you can see, Eric and I work together. I've been an instructional designer for the past about 20 years. And what that is, for those who are unaware of what instructional design is, the way I summarize it is I help build online learning. I help faculty, subject matter expert schools build online courses and programs. And over my career, I've built 500 plus online courses and programs, which includes blended learning and webinars and other kinds of varieties of online learning. But in that pursuit of working on those lines, I would work with a subject matter expert or work with a faculty member to take their content and put it online. And I would see in that process how many problems and bottlenecks we would get into the ADDIE process. ADDIE, analyze, design, develop, implement, and evaluate, kind of the standard model for developing online learning. There's other varieties out there, but that's usually the one I see most descriptive for most applications. And of course, there's all these bottlenecks in it, as many of us know, especially in development and content creation. Well, now with AI, and this is one of the reasons I shifted from that, like Eric said, a recovering academic. I was a college professor during that time as well, and saw instructional design from the design, the ADDIE process and designing it, and also its effect in the classroom itself. So where they're talking an online class or an in-person classroom, I would see how the planning would actually implement and work in the classroom. And one of the things I would often look for is technology. And whenever some new piece of technology would come out, say clickers, for example, I remember that back in the beginning of my career, clickers was a big one. And right before cell phones, or right before the smartphone. And we would do like pilot studies and small programs to kind of get an idea of, do these actually work? Because the question I would always look for is, okay, we have this piece of technology. How does this help us teach and learn? Can this be used to help us teach and learn, whether that's online or on ground? So I approach AI now from that same perspective. And a lot of that is like what Eric was talking about. I see a lot of potential with AI to change the way instructional design is done, not just from the speed point of view, because obviously when we include AI in the ADDIE process, say such as development of course content becomes, by my measurement, at least 50% to 75% faster than it was without AI. A power user, I can get it to about 90% faster than traditional models of building online learning. And that's just in the development phase. So if we look at AI throughout the entire process and incorporate it into learning, we have a whole bunch more potential, which I'm excited to get into with this panel, for personalized learning, of course, that has come out, but also thinking about things like languages. The new ChatGPT 4.0, for example, is trained on 92% of all human languages. So theoretically, languages shouldn't be a barrier. We could be able to translate online learning into any of those 92% of languages instantly at the click of a button. So that's changing the possibility that we have with learning. I'm really excited about that from an instructional design perspective and like a professor teaching perspective, being able to see what this opens up for students and learning. And not just for students and learning, but for me as a teacher, for me as an instructional designer, the amount of the different kinds of tools that I can get into and use. Differentiation, for example, differentiating content for students with AI is so much easier and so much more individualized than it was previously, where I had to just rewrite it manually. So this leads, of course, into a lot of the topics that we're going to be talking about in the panel, such as the ethics of this, when to use it, when not. Where is the role of the student on all this? What's the back and forth? And so as we get into it here, I'm excited to see what we explore. So with that, I'll kick it back over to you, Rob.
All right, thank you. Now, I don't know how it's lined up on your screen, but I can see the different panelists, and AI Jane is next, but we're going to skip her because I'm going to give her a little bit more time. She's actually going to be talking about what AI tools are out there that students are most likely using already, and how they are able to use AI in a way that, well, some people are using it a little unethically, other people are using it more ethically. But what tools are available that students can use to try to understand the material better, comprehend it, get through assignments more quickly, get the main points, help them with study, etc. So I'm going to skip her for now. We're going to go to Phil. It looks like you're up next. If you take a minute and introduce yourself, that would be terrific.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Eric, for coordinating the event. And wonderful to be here. Thank you for the participants for being here, and and listening to the valuable information that the panelists will share with you today. I'm very excited to be here. Great job, Samuel, on your introduction. And so I'll start introducing myself. So my name's Phil Vitrano. I'm an independent college and career advisor built on knowledge, helpfulness, and adaptability, who help high school and college students looking to find the right degree or career path by developing their skills and simplifying the path to success so they can make a more informed decision and achieve their goals. So what's my background? My background is in the world of IT. I was a AVP of business intelligence for a financial institution for a long time, providing managers and executives with valuable insights and information, asking the right questions, and presenting them with information to help them make decisions. Well, I've transitioned from the corporate world and providing them the intel. Now I'm doing it for students and parents. So students and parents, they're not in an organization setting, so they're losing opportunities like organizations do. So organizations, what do? They hire subject matter experts to do a job. But parents and students aren't necessarily asking for experts around surrounding them to help them with their goals and achieve their dreams. And so this is what I've done. I've bridged the gap to share with students and parents the opportunities that they have, and with the necessary insights to make more informed decisions, as opposed to all those opinions out there to guide students and try this on, but not necessarily giving them the data to help them, support them, and do the necessary assessments and due diligence, right? The students don't even know what due diligence is. And what do? I do the necessary due diligence to help make sure that they're making an informed decision and understanding what they are signing up to, because college is really expensive. So they're breaking the $90,000 a year mark now. And so this is a mortgage and a half. And students aren't set up for success, unfortunately. 100, out of the students that are going to college, 40% will not graduate in 6 years. That's 10 million students over the last 10 years. That is not a good situation for us. So education, this is why I'm here, because there's an opportunity to kibosh that percentage and really set up students for success. And hopefully the educators are here to be to listen and be open-minded to the incredible opportunities to address the challenges that the students are going through, especially after COVID, losing a year and a half of proper learning and teaching, and just a shame. So I am excited to be here. We've got a great agenda, and I'll pass it back to Rob. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I mean, what I love about this panel is you have so many different viewpoints on education, and it's so nice to just have everyone with their own little bit of input. This is quite the team, and there's just going to be some amazing things happening from this point on. Let's go ahead. We'll introduce Laura Lynn, let you take a minute and talk about you and your business and what you do.
All right. Well, again, thanks to everyone, all of the attendees and everyone here on the panel. We've had some great discussions so far, and we're going to bring that energy and all of those concepts to you in a few moments. Yes, I know this is the long introduction, but I'm going to keep mine short just so that we can get into the program. I'm Dr. Laura Lynn Mears. I'm a PhD molecular biologist who has been in the whole tech world ever since we rode the .com to .bomb. So I was in Silicon Valley at that edge, helping create some of the first bioinformatics software data analytics packages and bringing those to market. Worked with some amazing scientists and helping do the first assembly of the Human Genome Project. So fun stuff like that. Throughout my career, I've always been straddling technology, data science, marketing, go-to-market, working with universities, creating academic centers of excellence, being a guest lecturer, and really being involved at that level of academia, what's happening, what's changing, what's needed. And through some of the work that I've done over the decades, I've been able to dig into market research and really understanding and pulling that question behind the question to understand what it is that consumers want and need, trend spotting. I'm certified as a vision coach and in blue ocean strategy. So that helps me really look and find where are things moving and shifting. And then I've also dabbled really in media and in authorship, bringing a few books to market that I've written. as well as carrying a press pass. So where all that ties together and you're thinking, oh, you know, sounds like a dog's breakfast sort of a career. But what it's done is get me channeled into AI, looking at language models, did a lot of work years ago in helping create and tag the semantic web and looking to bring those tags and language models in behind for bioinformatics. And where all of the market research, the media, the press, all of this comes together is in and around prompt engineering. So I've been fascinated by how you can get very different answers, some of them incorrect, some of them just completely left field, and some of them very, very and surprisingly accurate, but it all depends on how you pose the question. And so that's part of what brings me here today. In my daily life, I guess I am the founder of Steeris, which is a professional development, personal development training company. We have an online e-learning platform, and we support 3 of the top 10 school boards in the United States, hundreds of thousands of students, actually millions if you add them all up. And we are there to help provide that after school enrichment and engagement. How do students get ready for the workforce? What do they do? And we've taken the e-learning platform we've built to power Helpopedia and the Hub for Help. Phil and I are the co-founders of Helpopedia, which is all about taking heart-centered folks that really care about our youth and the trajectory of our youth. And that's part of what really anchors us here and brings us here, so that we can bring that content and just those services and ability to take expertise that's available around the globe and bring it to our youth today through Helpopedia. So with that, I'm going to save all the rest of the goodies so we can get into the panel, and you'll hear me talking about the ethical dilemma that school administrators and teachers and all of that face. Rob, back to you.
Thank you so much, Laura Lynn. Yeah, as you can see, we have just a really expert panel here, which is awesome, and some amazing attendees too. Again, thank you for attending. So during the rest of this 2 hours that we have with you here today, so we have about an hour and a half left, we're going to be discussing where the AI technology is today, how students are using it, how teachers are using it, go into a little bit about that, and then talk about what are some of the ethical dilemmas behind AI and what are we facing? And then, of course, we're going to talk about the future of education, how AI could play a role in it, how it's going to affect how people learn, how students learn. I'm going to say it if they learn. We'll talk more about that. But yeah, so yes, going to be some very interesting things. Right now, we have a special guest with us, AI Jane. She has been looking and working a lot in the education area as a student would, as far as what kinds of tools are out there for students to use, how are they using them, how could they be using them both ethically and unethically. And we'll have her speak for probably a good 15-20 minutes just to kind of tell us a little bit more about what she knows and some of the and whatever she wants to share with you about her relationship with students and teachers and things like that. So I'll hand the time over to you, AI Jane.
Well, thank you so much for having me speak today. It's nice to meet everybody. My history is in marketing, specifically marketing in the AI field. So a lot of the technology based information that I kind of started with came from just being in the marketing field. Fast forward a little bit, for personal reasons, I decided to go back to school and ascertain a degree and, sit for the bar and get a law license. And so that's the process that I'm in. But I did have to start with a lot of courses that, for me personally, I just knew I did not need that information, but it's just a requirement to kind of get through the path and through that journey to the end result. So as I was taking a lot of these different courses that I had absolutely no interest in whatsoever, I decided, how can I streamline my efforts I have children, I have a life outside of school and outside of work. So how can I streamline these efforts? And of course, being in the AI field and being in the marketing field, I know how to find tools, utilize these tools, pick up software, and kind of delve through it. So obviously everybody knew about ChatGPT, and during the time that I started, it was really just ChatGPT 3.5, and that yields a lot of incorrect results, a lot of misinformation. Not saying it wasn't a great tool but you have to really learn how to use it. You have to learn exactly how to prompt something in order for whatever input you have to come out properly. And as the system started to advance with ChatGPT 4, and now we have 4.0, so there's just it's the model's advancing. However, there's so many cross-checking tools that you have to be able to use in order to effectively use it. And that's where I think we get into how ethical is this to use. And, there's just a lot of gray area there. For me personally, I don't use any of the AI tools to write what I need to produce. I do utilize it to help streamline outlines and note cards and just different things that I can utilize to help put together my final product. So a lot of the different tools that I find useful are beyond ChatGPT. I feel like most people who are in the education field really only know about ChatGPT. So I wrote courses for students to learn how to use all sorts of different tools that will help them get through school more effectively. They're going to learn, in my opinion, you learn better when you streamline your efforts. So when you bog down your mind with lots of information that is really not as helpful in the end result of what you need to know, that's where I feel like a lot of students get lost. And not everybody's built for school. Not everybody is built for college. You have a lot of people going to trades and things like that. So there's so many tools that are available for just about anything that you're trying to, it doesn't matter if you want to go into math. It doesn't matter if you're, it's a writing course or, something around those efforts. There's software and there's tools for just about every type of course you might need. And so I started developing these courses as I started kind of going through them to help students get through them. And then, of course, that comes with some pushback in regards to professors and the way professors will see how these are used. And, and it comes down to the individual, of course, like how ethically are you using this? Are you going to insert a prompt that says, write this for me, and that's what you produce? It's pretty easy to determine whether or not something is totally written by AI or if it's something that is partially written by AI. But you'd have to know, and you'd have to have the experience as a professor to know what those input outputs look like, different character patterns. The algorithm system is pretty easy to detect if you have that experience. I have several years behind my belt on that. However, a lot of these professors are using tools, these free AI checkers, and is it plagiarism? I mean, that's pretty easy to determine. I mean, you could use Grammarly and check for plagiarism, but how is plagiarism defined now? And a lot of times, even though you can't find anything else on the internet quite like it, and it doesn't show up as plagiarism through Grammarly or some other tools like that, professors are deeming the use of AI, any kind of whether it's Gemini or ChatGPT or any of these platforms as kind of basically plagiarized content. And I think that's where you kind of get into this gray area of what is and what isn't. And for me, I actually ended up with this situation last week, and it's kind of a funny story. Again, I use these tools to develop outlines and note cards, but then when I produce my own work, I produce it in my own words. And that's where I think you you get away from that gray area. There's these tools to help you, just like if you had Microsoft Word and you need a synonym, or you want to, use Grammarly to change your tense. Those are all available to us. However, when you have something spitting out information that isn't your own thoughts or your own work, of course, that's where you get into having some of that, what classifies or qualifies as your own work and what isn't. So last week I actually was in a class, and it was kind of funny. It was a marketing course of all things. I probably I don't care what professor you put in front of me. We can build a website. We'll go toe to toe, same website. I will outperform your marketing any day. So I actually enjoyed this challenge. We had to write about AdSense and Google AdWords, and we had to write about this, and I wrote an article about it. And the funny thing is, I've produced articles that you can read on the web that talk directly about this. So when I actually ended up getting a response from the professor asking me why it populated into like 3 different AI content detectors as partially written by AI. One was 6%, one was 34%, and another one was 99%. I actually found that so funny and challenging and interesting, and I got so excited about it. I loved that I got this email response from this professor. It was actually one of those things where I was like, oh cool, so I get to school you now, huh? Just because again, this is my wheelhouse, and I love this stuff. So I explained to him, look, like these are AI, like these AI detection platforms, they have algorithmic framework. Like these are learning systems. These learning systems, that's why you have a difference between 6%, 34%, and 99%, right? If it did not come back with, these are all 100% written by AI. And then, you go use 3 other softwares and they all say 100% human written, 97% human written, and so on. So all of these different systems that detect AI written content or human written content, if you go and look, at their policies and their FAQs, they'll tell you, like, you can pay for this service even, and we're not going to guarantee that this is going to be accurate, that you can rely on any of these results. I found it even a step further because the accusation was that it was written by ChatGPT. And then when because he asked me, can you copy and paste this and put this into these different softwares and check it and explain to me why it would come back this way? And of course I took the challenge. Absolutely not a problem. So I took it a step further and actually copy and pasted it back into ChatGPT and said, did ChatGPT write this? Logged into my own account and shot it back and explained why it wasn't written by ChatGPT. And so I guess what my point here is a lot of professors see these tools as almost like very black hat, that this is something that people should not be using on any level. However, I think if they're used properly, their tools are going to help really elevate the student's learning process. It's going to streamline that process. I think based off of what knowledge, we're just starting in AI. We're at the very, very beginning. Everybody's kind of dipping their toes in this. If you fast forward 5 and 10, 15 years from now, this is going to look completely different. And so if professors and universities don't get on board with utilizing a lot of the different tools that are out there and helping students learn better, more effectively, and getting them to really ascertain the nuts and the bolts of what this course is supposed to be for, I think that's where the education system might start to fall. It's like kind of slip through the cracks in learning, because I don't care what business you go to, if you're a finance director, if you're a CPA, all of these, anywhere you go, you're utilizing software to some degree, right? So you don't go to your CPA and ask them, can you hand write and, figure out my taxes? You're going to use some software that's got, formulas that are put together in order for you to get the kind of information you're looking for, right? So it's the input output and it's the learning system. And I think if as students and as people in general, if we can utilize this and the tools that we have to enhance our learning process, that's where I think we are going to be more successful in the future, because this software is only going to become more advanced. And with that being said, I mean, I have a lot of writing courses, and you cannot just, upload things and say, hey, write this for me. I've tested it on lots of, just for the purposes of writing the courses that I have, not for purposes of submitting my own work. But I have put information in there, and I am very savvy with the prompts, and it will come back with false information. Like it's a learning system. It is not true. It is not accurate 100%. So that's where a lot of professors are catching a lot of the students going, hey, like, you didn't write this. And the reason why is it's producing false information. So you have to be able to cross-check with credible sources. And again, I think in any profession, at the end of the day, you're not going to be good at what you do if you haven't learned the skills needed. And so how do we bridge the gap between students who need to learn the information and at the end of the day, be able to learn the kind of information we need to effectively be in whatever position and excel in that position, right? So that's kind of where that's where I stand personally on this. I'm in the process of writing some courses. I have a lot of tools that are available for students. And my initial thought on this was I struggled in school when I was younger. It took me until my adulthood to really have like that confidence of like, you can totally do this. You can get through this. And I'm a straight A student. I'm almost done with all of my courses. But if you would have asked me years and years ago, and I mean, I'm older now, so years and years ago, I didn't have that confidence. I did not think I could get through school. I thought I should have been the person who went to like, cosmetology school and did hair or something. I just didn't have I didn't know that I could get through what I got through. I know my marketing experience and my writing experience through marketing has helped me a lot, but to a lot of students out there who don't realize they can do it, like they really can do it. There's tools out there, there's software out there. It'll help you aid in what you're filling in some of the gaps or plugging some of the holes that you don't understand in your coursework. When you have professors that, there's a lot of great professors, and there's a lot of professors just create coursework just to, it's whatever the bare minimum is just to get you through. And some of those kind of courses really don't help the students. The students really struggle. And so for me personally, now that I have kind of gone through this, I wanted to help other people and I wanted to help other students. And then I also realized a lot of students will say, hey, like, this is really cool. I love this. It's going to do it for me. And so that also doesn't really help, right? So then I started trying to help develop some courses that would help professors integrate this AI software and what students are going to be using and helping elevate their classes. How do we implement using this software into my classwork so that way I can challenge the student? This is going to be stuff that people are going to be using anyway. So let's kind of, take a trajectory change on this and stop blacklisting and saying don't use it, but how do we use this software so we can then elevate the students in the course? And so that's some of the stuff that I'm working on. And I know we have another moving forward, we are going to have some more sessions like this, and I have lots of different tools that if anybody's interested in those tools, we can break down those, and I can help whether you're a student in here or you're a professor in here, depending on what side of the fence you sit on, try to help you understand what is available, how to use them, how to integrate them into the coursework. But moving back to my story from last week, it was pretty funny because by the time we went back and forth, initially they gave me it was a 60-point assignment, gave me a 1 out of 60 and told me to explain myself. By the end of it, it took 3 hours of email corresponding, and my one email correspondence to this professor, and then the response I got back was, "I just got schooled. Thank you so much for all of this information. It was enlightening. It was helpful. Here is your 58 out of 60 points." So I found it to be, again, it's that I enjoy this. I love this. And I never really thought I'd ever be on this particular journey, but I do enjoy helping other people learn AI and how to integrate it into their student life or their even for professors. I mean, one by one, let's integrate this into our coursework. If there's anything, like any questions, I would love to see them in the chat. If anybody wants a list of tools, or they want to learn about those tools, we're going to be providing those on our next session. And I can kind of like do a little bit of a blow by blow on each one of them, and you can see exactly what I'm using to get through my coursework, to streamline it, to help, and what other students will be using, because this coursework is being provided to students. So students throughout the United States are able to now have access to just lists of tools, how to use these tools. There's not a lot. The goal is to teach them how to use it effectively and how to use it ethically. The goal is not to say, hey, here's a list of tools, go pass all your classes, get straight A's, and don't learn anything. That's not what the intent is here. The intent is to get people to learn how to use them ethically and apply them to their learning process. But if professors or anybody you guys are interested in these tools, I'd be happy to share them extensively on our next session.
All right. Any questions for AI Jane? Now's a good time to ask those either in the chat or in the Q&A. While we're waiting for those questions to come through, Laura Lynn, I saw you several times going, yep, nailed it. Let's talk. I can tell you have something you want to say about that. So go ahead and chime in.
Oh, it's this huge battle that's waging, right, between what the teachers are saying, and I know we were going to get into this in the first section, but maybe we can. The teachers are saying, oh, no, those students, it's plagiarism, it's this, it's that, we can't have this. But yet all of the recent studies, including Forbes and EdTech, who published studies at the end of 2023, so 8 months old sort of studies, and I know things change rapidly, but more than 2/3 of teachers are using AI in their classrooms. So it's a little bit of the right pot calling the kettle black kind of thing. So that's one of the issues. And then the issue that AI Jane raised, where she was called out for essentially plagiarizing her own work, right? This speaks to the whole bigger problem that everything that we all put out there, and we look at the ubiquity and the prevalence of usage, right, of all of these different AI bots that are out there. These are constantly consuming more and more information. Plus, I think Dr. Helms had said that they've already consumed 2/3 of known language that's available on the planet digitally. So when you look at that problem, of course, everything's going to be plagiarized because we're putting it in there and then somebody else is using it, even if they're manifesting it in their own way. So there's going to be nothing left except whatever you can come up with on your own, not using AI to write things. And then that speaks to problems with productivity and how do we move forward, right? It's like we're denying the elephant in the room. So this just raises so many questions. And as you can tell, I'm anxious to dig in with the rest of the panel. Dr. Goodman.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I think, I mentioned earlier that idea of the programmable calculators. And, it's like deja vu in terms of that, in terms of smartphones. Do we ban them? Do we do this or that? Can we, and even when laptops, I remember the discussions I was involved with in the early 2000s where we rolled out laptops to students, and because we wanted to make sure they had access to the internet but we didn't anticipate them bringing it into class and what that would mean and everything else. And so I think it's important to think about, AI, people are like, oh my God, it's causing all this cheating and everything else. It's like nothing different than other technology things in the past. And I think it's how you use AI and you thinking of it as an enabler and those detection systems, and I've used dozens of them over a couple decades. To AI Jane's point, I mean, when you look at what they're creating in terms of the database, they're highly unreliable. There's some new systems emerging. I just got an email from one of the ones what was early to detect or try to detect sort of the use of AI this past week, where they now are basically recording the evolution of the work. So video-based things. And of course, thinking about that so you can actually see what's being edited in real time, how that work is evolving from the student. Because what happens is no different from a student turning in work that's radically different for maybe a project than what you're witnessing in class, whether it's in a physical class or online. Is it likely that that student actually created that work and understanding that, but now sort of detecting that? And of course, even at Western Governors a decade ago or more, we were looking at high stakes testing. And so a lot of those platforms where you're making sure, no different than going into a testing center, that what they were using is locked down and you can see what else is happening. I think, how that evolves to identify and watermarks and different technologies that are evolving around AI tools to help identify what is and isn't. But, students can easily find information online about how to use AI for academic work without getting caught. That makes it difficult for schools to detect AI generated content because there's a way around things. And of course, I think, that's really important to recognize that. And there was some research coming out of Stanford recently where they haven't seen evidence of increased cheating among high school students since the release of ChatGPT. To the points earlier, yes, faculty are using AI as well. And so where do you draw the line on that? And there's some other surveys that have been done looking at college students and the adoption of ChatGPT, and it's amazing how many are using it to complete a homework assignment. And this is where systems like Conmigo from Khan Academy and things like that, how do you use it as an enabler to actually empower students to have a learning tutor with them? So I just wanted to share that, but I think it does raise a lot of challenges around the use of AI for cheating in schools. And what does that mean to cheat? And are we enabling people and actually helping them become more effective in the learning process by leveraging the technology? Because the reality is, when you think about the majority of the work that students are exposed to historically in most universities, it's a rite of passage. It's like, when was the last time you had to do a trigonomic function, or, going back to the 3 R's on your job, but the types of things you're doing, you're collaborating. I can remember conversations where we can't have them working in teams because that's cheating. It's like, well, what do they do in the workplace, right? They need to collaborate. And the nature of it is that, AI isn't going to take your job. The person who knows how to use AI is. And we need to make sure we're enabling our students and empowering them and our faculty and teachers to be able to utilize AI. So I just wanted to share those thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's right on the money. And I think that's the whole reason that I put this panel together, and then I've tried to put this group together, is that is where we have this, teachers are using it and saying, I use AI to help generate my courses, but students are not allowed to use it to help understand the material or write the material or whatever. And I guess we've got to kind of look at what does that look like in the world in the future, which we're going to get to a little bit later. But real quick, AI Jane, you had one more comment?
Yeah, I figured I'd also add in relation to this topic, because that's where we get into this, like, what is important for the student to learn. I can tell you hands down, because I've had these conversations with the professors, because when you have somebody calling you out for, hey, this is plagiarized or whatever, then you gotta have to open up this dialogue box, and you're throwing it back and forth to even the professor. And the professor, like, and I've had this conversation on a few different occasions. This isn't the first that I've had this conversation with a professor. Oh, there's, some syntax issues. Okay, show me where. And then, it's like, oh, well, there's like one here or here. Okay, so like a normal person who's reading through, and these are doctorates, right? If I took my paper in to a professor and I sat you down face to face and I said, read my paper and tell me how good my paper is, you're going to read it and you're going to be like, wow, this is amazing. You did a great job. You're not going to look at that and say, like, I found some random syntax issue and it's so minor. So when I have this conversation with the professors and I ask them, so how are you finding these things? Because we're like, you'll do Zoom meetings where you're face to face. Can you let me know where that is in my paper? And without them having to log into anything, they can't tell you. But what are they doing? They're running it through like Grammarly, and Grammarly is going to tell you there's a syntax issue here, there's a tense issue here, right? So if somebody's writing their papers and then it's going through some software for a professor who has their master's or their doctorate degree, and they're looking at this work that you've provided and they're using AI technology to be able to determine what your grade should be, and it's making it easier for them to wade through the work, I think that's where we need to teach students how to utilize this software appropriately, effectively. But you're like, if you wanted to become a teacher, you're a writer, you want to become a professor, you're going to use this software. The software is out there. Professors are using it. We need to teach students how to use it. We also need to teach professors how to kind of, I want to say, like, step up the game, but there's more software out there than just, Grammarly and things like that to create different types of output for work, depending on what type of course. So that was one thing that I wanted to mention. Other things like, like you have like McGraw-Hill and different like educational platforms that have coursework that's already in there. Again, algorithm-based systems. So our students need to learn this because somebody developed that software and they made a lot of money doing it. And isn't that the point, to go through college and to get an education, so that way at the end of the day you have this professional position where you can help other people, you can get other people to learn, you're making a professional living in life. Those are all the things that we want for, like, with our education. That part of the title comes with that, right? So what do we need to do? We need to teach people how to use this software, and what better way to do it than in a way that makes sense from a professor's point of view. At the end of the day, if you're taking specific courses, or, if you're an English major, or you're a biology major, whatever it is, if you're a professor in that, what you're going to need in the workforce. So, a lot of that comes down to ascertaining the right information, and technology is involved, whether we like it or not. Let's ascertain all the information we need for technology, incorporated with whatever coursework. It doesn't matter what classes it's going to be. Let's incorporate that.
Yeah, Samuel, I wanted to ask you a little bit about what are some of the tools that educators are using already to create course materials, and tell us a little bit more about some of the ways that you are using it for creating courses.
Well, yeah, thanks, Rob. That's interesting. So I was just about to say, let me back up a little bit, because we're talking about like, AI in education today. And one of the interesting things I think about instructional design is the history of when it started. As a field, it began in World War II with the reel-to-reel films as being used for teaching, for rapid teaching for soldiers to get to the war. So I don't know if you remember those little things. I just remember Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right? Just Bueller, and just showing those movies. And that's how it started. So from there to where we are now, right? But the field has always looked at that. Like, how does the technology get involved? How does it change the way things are going? So right now with AI, to your question, so where do I kind of see it going and being implemented? Yes, we have the content creation part. And for that, currently I'm seeing a lot of ChatGPT and Gemini, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude. Claude has little bit more academic tone, at least out of the box, I think, than ChatGPT. But again, it's not hard. To AI Jane's point, it's not hard to train these little models to write in your own voice. It's very, very easy to do that. And once it does that, it's very difficult to tell from an external perspective if this is written by an AI or by yourself, especially if you edit it afterwards. I would never recommend just using something straight out of an AI completion, which is what they call, you prompt, it completes the prompt. And so that what it returns is the completion. But copying and pasting that directly into whatever it is you're going to do, it doesn't quite get it right, and it often has these kind of odd phrases in it. But I do see, like, just in the sense of like we were saying earlier, AI won't replace someone's job, but someone with AI knowing how to use it has the serious potential to take your job. So one of the things I've noticed working as an instructional designer contractor with some clients is it's like a 4-to-1 ratio. I with using AI, just ChatGPT and my own sort of GPTs that I build to do this, one person can replace 4 people who are not using AI. That's how much faster this works. And so the question is, and I think, that is a good point, is like, so if we're using AI to write the course material, why is it ethical? Is it right to tell students they can't use AI to help them write the material? Because again, in much the same process as we're approaching it from the writing perspective, like, it's not even just prompt engineering. It's a conversation that we have with the AI. So let me give an example. Let me back up for a little bit. So when I'm talking about creating courses or creating course content, so for faculty or anyone listening to, when I'm talking about creating course content, what I'm not talking about is just coming up with a clever prompt to put into ChatGPT out of the box, throwing it in, and copying that out and using it. It's actually a little bit more complicated than that. And one of the things that I've personally found to make it like a true worthwhile tool, this isn't just a time-saving tool, this is producing quality content that I'm then using in the class, is I load it with all of the information that it needs to draw from. So it's not just pulling from the general internet, although that is certainly part of it. I give it all the documents that it needs. So whether it's textbook material, course notes, all that kind of stuff, load that in there. Say, okay, this is what we're using to draw from it. This is your audience. This is your role. This is what you're doing at telling the AI this stuff. Okay, now let's work together and create the content. So there becomes this back and forth with the technology. And that back and forth is actually quite interesting. And a lot of the learning and a lot of the stuff that comes out of it is from that back and forth, not just from the initial prompt that says, okay, right, I need a lecture on, marketing 101 or something like that, to use AI Jane's example. So what it produces, it's like, okay, that's a good start, but then there's a series of prompts that come after. Okay, adjust it this way. Well, let's incorporate this other piece of technology, or even better, to give it back to it and say, criticize this. Say, okay, now your role is as a critic. I want you to look at it and tell me where it can be improved, and that really ups the quality of the end product, I've noticed. So that's some of the areas that I'm really beginning to see this kind of developing and with AI. But there's a lot of other potential I see for AI for assessment. So for example, one of the things we're talking about now in education with cheating, for example, right, is like, oh, we can use this to write our essays. Students can use it to write their essays, but students could buy their essays online or have friends write them previously. That's always been a thing. I've always seen that happen. And it's quite easy. I've had friends, or I've had students write, their roommates will write the paper for them or something like that. So then as a professor, my sort of stance on that is, okay, what am I grading? What is it I'm trying to assess here? So if I was an English teacher, it's like, okay, I'm looking at structure, I'm looking at the form of the paper, I'm looking at are they making the argument all the way through, things like that. So if these tools are going to be able to start doing this, I need to start changing how I'm assessing what's going on, how I'm assessing the learning, so that AI can't do it. And one of the ways I think that's going to start going is, and we see this in the AI space, we're talking a lot about generative AI, which of course, ChatGPT to generate all this content. Another way it's starting to shift are agents and assistants. And these are, well, chatbots is another term for them. The problem with the term chatbot that I have is I think we probably all remember the little Microsoft paperclip that used to appear in Word back in the day. Yeah. And that it became like, what is it, the 90s here we're talking about? And it was like the butt of a whole bunch of different jokes, and people would just turn that off right away. I can see you're writing a letter. We're like, oh no, no. But that was like the early version of AI, which was essentially a branching decision tree. It wasn't true like generative AI like we're using now. So now I don't like referring to them as chatbots because that was a chatbot. But an agent powered by ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, one of these AI models is much more intelligent. And because of the natural language processing, can interact with us as like we're talking to a person, like we're chatting person, I should say. So it's still that two-way kind of back and forth. But with that, now we have the opportunity to use these agents as an assessor. It can interview students and through a conversation, get the information and assess whether or not they know that information. Because one of the great things about AI is it's really, really good at processing qualitative data, whether we're talking about text or images, which traditionally has been a huge barrier in the instructional design process. Because once we get to the evaluation stage, we're looking at, okay, assessment of student learning and all this kind of stuff. Well, usually that was done through multiple choice because that could be very quickly graded through some sort of algorithm, usually in a learning management system or something like that. But now with AI, it can take large large sets of qualitative data, essays, short answers, all that kind of stuff, and through a sentiment analysis, really determine where does the student fall in this. And if it can't assign a grade, it can at least give a pretty good feedback as to what's going on. That's some of the areas that I've currently seen and kind of where I'm seeing it go in a little bit. And there's a lot of potential in there to really disrupt, I think, the instructional design field in a very positive way and speed up the process and then make it basically a new thing. I see online learning changing into AI learning, what we traditionally thought of as online learning, shifting into something new called AI learning. That's where I'm seeing it go.
Awesome. I appreciate your feedback on that. Very good. And it really does come down to those prompts, how you prompt it, how you insert those prompts into Claude, ChatGPT. I mean, if you don't do the prompting the right way, then it's not always going to do exactly what you expect it to do. So that was a point that, yes, Phil.
Yeah, great job, Samuel. Great job, AI Jane. And I'd like to talk about some of the strategies to overcome cheating, right? So Samuel's mentioned, and this is not earth-shattering, that cheating has been going on for a long time, and there's ways around it. So teachers, professors, you've got to be creative to identify opportunities to reduce the amount of cheating. And how do you do that? Well, you've got to be creative and ingenuity. Yeah, that word that I can't say. So one of the ways is to design the questions, the assignments that make it difficult to cheat. And how do you do that? You incorporate unique context or case studies that are not readily available online. If you personalize the task, so the students must write about themselves, that is an opportunity. If you provide real and local examples requiring students' own thoughts and ideas, that is another opportunity. Now, this requires critical thinking on the professor's part and the teacher's part, and saying, how you're doing all this learning and teaching, how can they apply it to real world and get them to engage in the real world, as opposed to behind their desk and just utilizing AI. You've got to create opportunities that they're interacting with others, even if the opportunity is to learn what they know, so that the kids, the students who've already been taught the information, to share that information back to the adults that may not know this information about American history, so if you're teaching history, you could challenge them, ask your parents how much they know about the Bill of Rights. And what does the student want to do? They want to up their game and know more than their parents. And so this could be an opportunity for them to receive this information and to assess and then discuss with the teacher, this is what my parent thinks of what the Bill of Rights are. And so now you've got this learning interactive activity with another individual. It doesn't have to be the parents. It could be other people to interact with. Networking is a good thing. There's some skills there, opportunities, professors and teachers to engage. And so this is the innovative concepts that could be presented as strategies. Because when you're interacting with individuals, you're not interacting with AI. And this is where learning could take place. This is where interviewing could take place. This is where all these other skills that you've not thought of before can be incorporated in your curriculum for them to apply the knowledge that you're sharing with them. And so this is one of the opportunities, and there's other strategies, and I'd like to Laura Lynn to chime in because she is chomping at the bit to jump on this conversation.
Indeed, chomp, chomp, chomp. And so my wonderful Helpopedia co-founder there, Phil. So two things, two really, like, I think, big concepts. One, when you get into that interaction and dialogue, right, that's when you can really assess the learning. If you look at all of the very, very tough examinations, be it at the bench for your bar, be it as a medical intern when you're trying to get that final exam, it's a combination of written and oral. Why? Because in that oral exam is when you start to really dig in. Did you really learn this? Did you memorize? Did you regurgitate? Did you use AI to cough it up, right? What did you learn? And so I love that combination. Plus, I think that students need it. And does this scale? Well, I mean, come on, we've got 28 to 30 students in a typical high school or middle school, fewer as we go down into the elementary school levels in numbers. Of course, when you get into the 101 classes in university, you've got potentially thousands of students there. So that doesn't work in that way. But, enter the second part of this, what I want to say. When you start thinking about how you solve for problems and how you dig in and which methodologies you use, right? Like Kepner, Trago, and all these different other methods. One of the things that you can do, which is so simplistic that any educator at any level can apply it, is why, right? You ask why 5 times. Why did you answer it that way? They said this. Why did you think that was the right choice? And then that's the oral exam. Or if you don't even do that orally, you're putting that in as the question in the final exam. So you can scale to those 101 and 201 classes that have thousands of students at a time in the auditorium. And then you, as the teacher, the educator, the professor, whatever your role specifically, is in your job title, you put your critical thinking hat on, or you use the tools that Samuel talked about and help you, and you figure out, are they really understanding that flow? Are they going through it, or are they just inserting a nonsensical answer within each of those steps? So it's not super difficult. It takes work, but it can be done.
Another strategy that the professors and teachers could consider is using creative and multimedia formats. So you're asking students to create videos and or run a podcast or visual presentations instead of just written essays. So if you're, it's back to Laura Lynn's point, from an oral perspective, you can absolutely know and understand if that student is applying the knowledge, understanding the knowledge when they're on the spot for presentations. And yes, that could be a lot of anxiety, but the question is, are your students prepared to orally present? I've heard that people would rather go to jail than do any sort of public speaking engagement. So let's overcome this challenge. And can you create a safe space, a secure space for students to participate in the classroom and be comfortable, even if they pull a Biden on you, where they're really nervous and trying to reach out for the words. Practice is important. And if all the students are respecting each other and supporting each other and helping each other, especially when you start young, it's important for that oral presentation. So that is absolutely an AI avoiding cheating. You can't use AI unless the kids are really smart and they have the earphones. And now there's one kid in the back, or they're at home and they're feeding the information to the student. Let them be creative and overcome that. And certainly there's always opportunities for cheating. That's another effective strategy for professors and teachers to consider. One of the elements that was also discussed was focus on the process, not just the final product. So implement process writing strategies where students submit drafts and revisions. So that's an important element. If you are asking them to write papers, you've got to see the work associated with it, not just the final copy. You've got to implement that with the features of AI. Even if they're utilizing AI, what is the process that they did to complete the assignments? Another component that's really important is to incorporate reflective writing. Assign personal reflections to gauge understanding and detect inconsistency. If you're asking them for that component, it's going to be harder for them to, and certainly they could try to use AI, but you'll get a sense of if this is a good reflection of the work they're doing. Are there other strategies that the panelists would like to add? Go ahead, Laura Lynn.
Well, what I wanted to do was summarize, right? I'm that like, okay, list taker and stuff. So what are some of the things that we've heard? And I'll kind of roll it backwards and ask my fellow panelists to jump in and say what I've forgotten. So one, putting a greater emphasis on some of the oral work and the creativity. So different media like a podcast, like a video that the student has to record describing their thought process and whatever that they're doing. Number two, having a part of an oral exam where you're analyzing why they made those decisions, right? Ask why 5 times. Step number 3, focusing more on the process, on how they came up with the answers that they did rather than on the product and the outcome. Number 4, Samuel, using some of the tools out there to help you assess what they did, what was the rationale behind it, the quality of it, and really trying to dissect it down into different sections to understand semantically how they arrived at it and the quality and output of their answer. Panelists, there was one more.
So there is this other component. It's utilizing and teaching the responsibility of AI use. You put this in front of the students the first day, manage their expectations, and certainly professors and educators have to be prepared, but you're educating students on ethical AI use and consequences of cheating. So get that up front, educate the students what's good, what's not good. This is so important. You're setting the tone, and there's an understanding. And the question is that associated with the entire school or just that professor? Because in the world of college, in the world of high school, in the world of middle school, those teachers, they set their own rules. They set their own guidelines. And so is it confusing if every teacher has a different understanding of what's cheating and what's not cheating? That could complicate things. So standardizing as a university whole, educate, and then certainly have as many intellectual conversations as you like with all the professors who won't support some things and won't support the others, but you got to get on the same page, collaborate, work together. What's the standards? And maybe there's a customized for each professor where, okay, here's the 10 standards, and each professor has 2 or 3 additional ones that the students have to manage, because that's how life is. Based on your boss, they're going to provide you requirements. You go to another boss, go to another client, they're going to have different requirements. So it's you're actually developing a personal solution for each professor, which can be the case and is always generally the case that you're doing that anyway. So that's another added strategy for those professionals who are here.
Yeah, thanks. You know, one of the things that I think I really want to pose the question is, what is the reason that we need to teach students how to use this ethically? And ethically speaking, what kind of rabbit holes can we go down as a society if students are not using this ethically? And we've talked about this a little bit before as a group, but I kind of wanted to open up this. Let's talk about, what is this ethical dilemma that we're facing? It's both good because students need to use it, but it's also bad because students could start using this to get through school and not really learning much of anything. And not to mention, as more information, and this is, I think, a big point, as more information is released into the internet, which ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini can now access to in order to receive and respond with answers. This information is being passed in there. Who's making sure that that information that's going in there is not just a regurgitation of someone else's information infused with a few hallucinations from AI, and now what we have is garbage in, garbage out, and we're really not moving ahead as society at all. I know people learn different ways. Eric, how do we fix this?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, I think when you look at it more broadly speaking, ethics, why do we need to be ethical? I mean, we want to guide moral behavior. We want to promote social harmony. We want to build character, enhance critical thinking, ensure that there's not bias and fairness, and that we're just in terms of how we function in society. And the list goes on, professional standards and social responsibility. It reminds me of conversations I had early, probably 2000s. I was at AACSB, which is a accrediting body for business schools conference, and we were talking about the evolution of the internet and what it meant for business education. And everybody was like, "Oh, we need an e-commerce course for this, or we need an e-marketing course, and we need an e-ethics course, and we need a e-operations course, and we need a e this and that." And I remember thinking at the time, no, we don't. Like, this is part of everything. This is the nature. It's changing the way business is done. And I think that's what we're seeing too with AI is it's transforming business models and really inviting us to rethink, reimagine, and reinvent what historically has been we've always done it this way. And I think more broadly speaking, specific to AI, when you start looking at the need for that. And Rob, you touched on some of the things. Obviously, we want to make sure that there's transparency and accountability for what's going on, the training of the models, that we're minimizing bias and things that we know are prevalent based on what's been fed into these systems, privacy and security, preventing harm. At the end of the day, we want to act ethically to prevent harm. It was interesting. I saw a study and it was like, people want the AI and this, like, it was around autonomous vehicles and the value of them. And we know from autonomous vehicles that actually there's some research around that there's actually greater levels of safety based on that compared to an individual driver. Yet I think it was north of 80% of people don't trust an autonomous vehicle. No different than the radiologist using AI. We know it's more effective than what their eyes can see to detect cancer and look at, and make sense of things. But yet people don't trust it. So I think it's really making sure that for AI to be widely adopted, people need to trust it. And we've got to build the guardrails and the practices to help the public by ensuring we're using the system's responsibility. With anything like this, there's an opportunity to be used for good or bad. But there's just a few of the thoughts. And I think it takes the human element to understand how it can complement our own critical thinking and enhance then what we can do.
Yeah, it's like trying to teach someone how to work on a car, but you're not allowed to use the tools. This new tool came out, which makes it much, much easier to access this particular part of the car. Or even a surgeon who invents a new tool that makes it easier to perform an operation. Oh, no, you can't use that. That's cheating. Now, it's not cheating because it's just making it easier for the doctor. And the ethical behind that is that we're still trying to, or the ethics behind that is we're still trying to save someone's life. So whatever we have to do to do that is good. So as these new tools come out, we have to say, what's the ethical use of this, and what is the unethical use of this, and how can this be applied? Samuel, was it you that raised your hand?
Yeah, I was thinking, in terms of the ethics, one of the things I was thinking that when I look at these kinds of tools, like from teaching and learning perspective, one of the things that I often think of is let me back up and say where I'm coming from. So I remember when spell check first came out, I used to get really bad grades all the time for spelling through like elementary and middle school, and for handwriting. That was my other one. Handwriting and spelling were my two worst things. I ended up being an English major, ironically enough, but and I never did fix those two things. My handwriting is still really bad, but it doesn't matter because we type all the time. So it didn't turn out to be as big of a barrier as my teachers originally had thought, right? And the same thing with spelling because of autocorrect and spell check, which is, at first it was just in like Word and Word Perfect and all that, but then it was just ubiquitous. Now it's everywhere. Like any tool I'm using will have those little red underlines. And it's so, just as an aside, when I was a teacher, writing on the whiteboard, obviously there's no spell check on the whiteboard. So I would just have a red marker handy to put the little red underlines under words that I knew I misspelled. But the point of that is because of the tool, I never corrected my spelling. I never really had an incentive to do that. I knew with autocorrect, it would just do it. And there's certain words that I always just mess up as a result. So this is known. There was an article that came out back in, I think it was 2007, 2008, in the magazine, The Atlantic, and it was titled, "Is Google Making Us Stupid?" And it was an interesting perspective on it, because what it was saying is we're offloading a lot of sort of cognitive tasks to Google. Instead of trying to remember stuff, we just Google it. Instead of trying to learn something, we'll just Google the answer. So the question was, is that taking away or diminishing a skill of our own in favor of this tool? Yeah, and the short answer is yeah. I mean, it just says like using a calculator probably would erode eventually your ability to do numbers in your head. It's just the neuroplasticity of the brain. We're just adapting to the tools that we have. So one of the things with AI that I've started to do, since it can write a lot for us and do a lot of things for us, is before I even jump in and start putting something into ChatGPT or something like that, a lot of times I'll just, maybe not all the time, especially if I have time, I'll do that initial part on my own. What is the completion I'm looking for? So if someone were to ask me, so if I'm prompting it, hey, I need a course outline for this, whatever, for module 1 of a course in marketing and economics or something like that, help me write that down. So what I would usually do as an instructional designer first is look over the material and come up with the outline on my own. And that could take me a while. So every now and then I like to do that again. Let's use that cognitive skill instead of jumping into AI and having it do it for me. Because I think just in terms of, for me, it's an ethical question. So it's like, to Eric's point, why be ethical? Why do this in the first place? Because these tools are obviously online. So there's times where we don't have access to them, and we're going to need to be able to continue using that muscle, right? To write on our own, to be able to like write a Facebook or a LinkedIn post on our own without asking ChatGPT to do it. Here's my notes, write me this LinkedIn post or whatever. So that's one of the things I wanted to throw out there. And there is like occasionally turn off the tool, remember to just use our own cognition, use our brains because not only does that keep that skill active within us, it keeps our critical thinker aspect. When we start looking at the completions and the things that AI produces for us, we can start saying, nah, that's not quite right. So I don't know if anyone's kind of explored it, if everyone's had this, like, I'll try to get AI, whether it's ChatGPT or any of the others, to create something for me. And there's a back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And eventually I'm just like, you know what, I'm just going to do this on my own, because the amount of time I just spent in the AI conversation, I think I could have just done it on my own in less time. So it's kind of interesting to find out where those lines are. And that's why I kind of throw that in there to keep using that skill.
I think that's yeah, it's just great points. I mean, we have to kind of look at where is this thing going? If we don't get a hold of this and we don't teach students how to use this properly and ethically, and that being said, even teachers, I mean, what's to stop the teachers from just loading all the homework into an AI and saying you grade it, and now they don't have to really do much of anything there? I mean, I can see a point where, and I've brought this up in previous conversations, where AI can be very, very effective. And Eric, I know you can talk to this, and Laura Lynn, but where we have AI educators that understand exactly how that particular student learns, that it's teaching, and it could teach multiple students in their language, not necessarily language when we're talking about speech, but their learning language and how they learn best, visually, audio. Are they a hands-on, or are they more of a, so AI could be molded so that the AI tutors are now teaching children in the way that they best learn, the quickest way possible, downloading information to them very quickly. And that could be the upside of things. Then there's also some of the downside of things, again, which is where students are just using it to come up with everything. Laura Lynn, we'll have you go ahead and chime in. Then I want to have Eric talk a little bit about the different ways that students learn and how AI could be beneficial for those students.
I'll keep it brief. It all comes down to, and we didn't talk about it, but we kind of danced around the whole issue, is that what separates AI from us as humans, right, is the ability to be sentient. Now, of course, there's all these conversations and all this progressive research and efforts in technology to completely transform AI to make it sentient. And there's some evidence now that this is starting to happen. But at the end of the day, it's our ability to feel and to connect with others. That's what separates us from a robot. And it comes back to everything we've shared here. When we lose that ability because we have that dependence, we're scrolling our social media, we're barfing up everything out of Google or out of some AI bot or whatever else, and we're not thinking, we're just like, wait, we're becoming the robot and we're just using the technology. We need to get back to the times not so long ago, right? We're not that old here on the panel, that we talked with each other. We communicated, we connected, we share things through our physical body language, as well as our choice of words, the language we use, the tone we use, the speed, the everything, the intensity, all of that, right? That's how we connect. And we have to keep that a core part of who we are and what we do, because we are all spending way, way too much on screen time instead of connect time.
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important to recognize that. And ultimately, when you start understanding how people are spending their time and also what they're engaged with or not in the classroom, I think it speaks to what we see related to how people learn. And I think one of the biggest disconnects, and I heard you indirectly, when we talk about the importance of what is taught in the classroom, and even Samuel, like, okay, like how you write, like I know my kids, they didn't learn how to write cursive. Like, how important is that? It's like, and spell checking, and it's like, okay, you have tools to help you do that. I mean, I don't know if it's true or not, but I remember hearing something like, I think it was Edison or maybe it was Einstein. It's like, I don't remember phone numbers. If I need it, I can look it up. It's like, and so much of what we are teaching, unfortunately, in education are things that students are regurgitating for a test and they forget it the next semester, right? It's not something that's useful and practical. And I think understanding how students learn, and it's also because of that, the biggest mistake we make one of the biggest mistakes is the relevance of the education, helping students connect it to something that's meaningful to them, what's important to them, that activates their brain and engages them. And so when you look at, problem-based learning or really other models in other countries or things that evolve with even the hands-on apprenticeships and things like that, where people are engaged in a different way, that makes a huge difference. And unfortunately, you can go back to the work of Howard Gardner on the theory of multiple intelligences, out of Harvard. And our education system's designed primarily to look at mathematical and logical and a little bit of the linguistic type of intelligence. It doesn't get into spatial and bodily and interpersonal and naturalistic and existential and other things like that. And so when you start looking at how are we judging the learner and what does that look like? And it's attributed to Einstein, although I don't think he said it. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it's going to live its whole life thinking it's stupid. And that ultimately is setting up a lot of learners to not be successful in the education process, and why we see the abysmal completion rates that we see across higher education. And so when you look at learning style theory, understanding how students learn, and there's a lot of research on, like the visual, auditory, kinesthetic, it's not well supported. I think the key point is, how do you begin matching and engaging the learner depending on the task in things that are going to be important to what they want to know. And really, the most important skill is learning how to learn. It's a metacognitive skill that's going to be valuable. And how do we do that in education? And there's a lot of different systems and approaches. And actually, if someone's interested in learning, there's a really powerful system that's a values-based system that engages the learner. So you'll see I've got a QR code here. You can certainly on our website for Innovate AI Systems, and we got a variety of trainings for educators and educational leaders as well, but you'll see something that's called persona system. And it's a really quick 90-second thing. And I've used it with dozens of schools to help them understand their learner and how to connect with them in a way that they can actually engage the different types of learners. And ultimately, not only in the classroom, but then how that translates into other areas of the educational experience. And I think that is really important. And Rob, I guess with that too, at some point, it'd be great to talk about just AI more broadly, because I know there's several people on as attendees that are here that I recognize that are, administrators, campus leaders, directors, presidents, deans, and so forth. So we can talk more broadly about that, but I don't want to detract from this idea of how we customize and personalize learning. And I think for the first time in history, going back to that Bloom taxonomy and the Two Sigma problem, we have an opportunity to solve for that in a powerful way. And Samuel, I appreciate your comment about, maybe it's not online learning, it's AI learning. And how does AI learning supplement and transcend not just online, but what's happening in the classroom as well? So all learning in the same way that e-commerce and e-thing, it's just part of what we do, and it becomes the new norm for not only the business model, but the education model. So I think that's really important. And Rob, I'll look to you. I don't know if other people have comments on learning styles and how to adapt, but I think it's really helping students understand their own learning process and how best they learn, and recognizing you've got to engage different types of intelligence in the learning process. And you can think back to the things that are memorable for you, like your first kiss, or maybe for those that are old enough, like where were you when 9/11 or the space shuttle blew up? It's things that are charged with emotion. And I have seen thousands of classrooms over the last couple decades, and instructors and hundreds of thousands of students, that there's no emotion being activated. And there's no wonder why they don't remember anything, because that's how learning takes place, to go from your short-term memory into your long-term memory. So
Yeah, I think, Eric, would you talk to the point, I don't know if you saw in the chat, Mohammed made a point about how AI is based on accumulative knowledge. We shouldn't rely on that 100%. And it's particularly difficult to find reliable information to base your research on, especially like I was kind of talking about, if AI is just, research is based on just taking the same knowledge and regurgitating in a different way. Is it really true research?
yeah, well, I mean, research, and I used to lead a doctoral program and at a university. So, I mean, what constitutes research, it's another conversation. I think in general, how you're adapting it and what you're crediting that individual for, because you're building on a body of knowledge in scholarly work, of course, and how you do that, and maybe extrapolating into other areas. And ultimately, it's understanding, what is the source? And that's the challenge with a lot of the AI. There are some other tools that are maybe better for academics. We talked about Claude, Gemini, Chat, and so forth. Certainly, there's tools like Perplexity or Scholar AI, and the list goes on, that are maybe a little bit more better geared towards some of that research and information. But I think it's also that cumulative knowledge. It's how do you evolve it? And using AI as a tool to help us not take away from and diminish our brain functioning. That article about Google, like with the internet, is it taking away from that? But really something that complements our ability to ideate, to create, to break new ground. Obviously, there's grounded theory. There's different types of theories that evolve in scholarly work as well. But I think it's understanding, what is the contribution to the field, or to, better yet, to industry and to society, because a lot of the research that's done has not been historically value added and evolving different systems. And even going back to Laurel, and I had to laugh when you talked about the 5 whys. How many people know where that comes from? And I'm dating myself because I taught TQM back in the 90s. But, it was something that evolved out of industry. The 5 whys, it was Toyota. Like, the founder of Toyota was like, here's what we do. This is why we want to get to the underlying essence of it. And I think, if anything, as educators and those that are listening and attending, is one takeaway is, don't be left behind. Don't be the blockbuster that is disrupted by Netflix. I mean, it's like the education models, and there's more things happening now with education is so prevalent and available to people. It used to be you had to go to the ivory tower to be educated. No, I mean, you can go online and get an education that's far superior, and you don't have to spend six figures to do it. It's free, or you can go to boot camps. And that's why when you start looking at the tech companies that are hiring, there are more graduates being hired out of Western governors than the Ivy League schools for computer science, because they're learning applied things that they can translate theory into practice. So I think that's really important. I do want to touch on, and then I'll turn it back over to you, but I think it's really important to look at AI, as we work with different schools and organizations, it's recognizing it's a tool for efficiency. And so in the same way that for faculty, for students, for administrators to recognize that there's a lot of administrative tasks, and it's not always maybe the 4-to-1 in Samuel's case where you can, save yourself 75% of time, but it's a game changer when you start looking at what it can do in terms of resource management. And of course, some of the tension and pain points for faculty and teachers in terms of workload transcend into leaders in the education environment. So when you start thinking about, how do you adapt and change course scheduling? What does that look like to real-time enrollment, to minimize conflicts with courses, changing the nature of scheduling? If a student fails a class, how do you get them quickly, figured out? What does their degree audit look like? How do you get them to completion? What are the use of maybe chatbots in the registrar's office to expedite student registration inquiries, things like that? There's not one area of education that can't be impacted in a positive way by AI. I think the biggest promise is what we were just talking about, is the personalized support for students. How do you provide the academic assistance based on the student data and the information? I can remember I worked on a pilot with the spinoff out of Carnegie Mellon around adaptive learning technologies, and AI takes that to the next level in terms of what you can be doing. And then also even for faculty to receive AI curated professional development things like what's working, what isn't working. I've been through so many accreditation processes with a lot of different, regions and across the US, depending on the university I was at. But what does that look like? How can you leverage AI for the accreditation process, for report writing, for grant work, things like that? Data-driven decision-making around the curriculum and teaching strategies is really a key area. When I was leading the College of Business at Western Governors, in any given year, I would have about 100,000 information data points we were looking at and synthesizing. This was before AI, to try to make sense about targeted changes. Now, out of that 100,000 inputs, we would make north of 4,000 changes to our programs. Now, granted, I had multiple programs and different majors and everything else, and I had a team of dozens of instructional designers and psychometricians looking at the data and the performance. But when was the last time you as a faculty member or teacher changed your course or your program or adapted it, right? And so it gives you the ability to look at predictive analytics and support students in a different way and keep your curriculum relevant with insights that are aligned to the job market and the trends. And I think that's a really important thing as well. And then, I mentioned, of course, you've got the ability with AI to create these virtual like clones, if you will, that can support things. When you're talking about staffing and processes that can be automated, that's what we do when we work with an organization, is look at what does that look like, whether it's in curriculum development, looking at the performance of courses, personalizing the learning in student services, whether it's, events or things like that. Like, how do you plan for that? How do you predict what's going to be most important? In financial aid, automated application processing, eligibility analysis, intelligent agents that can provide advice to help people understand the financial aid process, career services. I mean, the list, it goes on. And I think it's important to understand the bottom line is we can leverage AI in so many different ways with resource allocation, making better data-driven decisions about things that will be beneficial for really unlocking the power of it for for faculty support in ways we haven't historically done, and in particular, professional development. Like, you've got a professional development tutor at your hands, not just for students, but for your faculty that you can personalize. And so I think it's really important to recognize this isn't just about cheating and use of AI. This is about how do we leverage a game-changing, world-changing tool that has the potential to reshape learning and education as we know it globally. So with that, thank you for letting me pontificate. I'll turn it back over to you, Rob.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I think now is a good time to kind of talk about where we're headed with this panel and what we want to do with these calls, because you've covered a lot of things we're talking about. These are all the things that we can do, but I don't think we've really talked about how to yet. And so I think it's important that I want the audience to know, and anyone that's listening to this recording, that we're going to be having another one of these calls here in their near future, which we'll keep in the loop, where we're going to be going through some of these different tools and how to use AIs and how to go through and look at the data from all those things that you were just talking about, Eric. I mean, the AI and the ability for AI to do that. So I'd like to just let everyone know there is much, much more to come. We want you to stay tuned. We want you to be a part of this community. We will send links out to all of the information that is being shared today and all of the different tools that like Laura Lynn and Phil have put into place. And AI Jane has talked about the tools that she has a course where she goes through all of the different tools that students are using and how they're using it and how it can save time. And it goes into all just all kinds of things. So let's go ahead and Samuel, you had a comment, I believe, Laura Lynn, and then I think I just want to kind of open this up to question time, where we'll go to more of the kind of panelist view. But Samuel, go ahead and chime in, Laura Lynn, and then let's open it up to Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob. Yeah, I'll keep this quick since we're getting up to the hour. I was just going to say to Eric's point, thank you for that. Because looking at AI from a systems perspective. So when I was a dean of online learning and the graduate studies at one college, and we would get, there was a question that we would have is like, what do we do with all this data? So we're collecting all this data on students, the end of course surveys. There's town hall kind of information. There was surveys sent out to the students. A lot of that is qualitative. They'll write in answers at the end. Well, one of the things that I think is a great application of AI is to be able to process that data almost instantly, just attach it, upload it into even just a ChatGPT kind of, pre-programmed to know what to look for and how to analyze it. And that can give some incredibly valuable information back to teachers and faculty. Because if you have a class of, even if it's just 30 students and every single one of those students has, written quite a bit on their end of course surveys, it could be a lot to go through, especially if you're teaching multiple classes. So if you have 30 students in one section and you're teaching 5 or 6 sections per term, that can add up quite a bit. And so the ability of AI to go through this rapidly is really interesting. So to the point too, also at the administrative level is what I was saying about, like, as an instructional designer, kind of that 1-to-4 kind of ratio, whatever it is. So what happens to the other 4? They're not let go. They're not fired. They're not laid off. They're brought into other aspects. So now the entire design of online learning changes. So the initial process, like I'm familiar with the ADDIE, of like, we're talking 12, 16 weeks to develop one course. Well, now with AI, that drops to maybe a week. So now this process has sped up. So I think the way we begin to approach learning and online learning is like it's a fundamental mind change. Formerly, we're producing one course, 30 students enroll in the exact same course. But because of the way AI can do this and speed it up, the personalized learning has, I think, changed the game. Now we don't need one course for 30 students. Each student could kind of have their own course. And it can be written to them as they go. And by personalizing it, one of the things I'm really looking forward to in the future of this, and I'll wrap up with this here, is when it comes to personalizing the learning, it can personalize it to what the student's interests are, to the point of getting the motivation back in there. So let's say, for example, I'm taking, physics or whatever, like one of the gen ed classes, something like that. I'm taking physics, I'm taking my science class, but my main interest, my main thing is soccer. That's really what I like. That's my main hobby. I'm not going to school for it, but that's what I'm looking for. That's my interest. Well, if an AI tutor knows that, it can very easily describe all the physics it needs to me in that context, using soccer as the analogy. And that would, as an individual, of course, as a student, make me far more engaged in the content. So one of the things I would like to put out there toward sort of the admin level is a rethinking of the way we approach education. So it's not sort of a mass market. It's literally individualized to each and every single student based on a variety of different factors. One of which, of course, that Eric brought up was that personal value system. Bringing that into that whole picture, I think, really begins to change the nature of this game for the better of teaching, learning, and the whole context of it.
Well, and I think Laura Lynn, you had talked, I think you have a platform where educators can upload some of their own courses and material, isn't that right, Phil?
That's correct. We've got two vehicles for it. Steerus, which is the corporate side of things that goes into government agencies, other schools, and businesses at large, but also Helpopedia that Phil and I are involved in and co-founded, where our hub for help, we are bringing all kinds of content in that other educators and not even educators, anyone who's a professional in their field, that can bring content to help students with career discovery, understanding insights on workplace readiness, and any of that. So yes, we do. If we can always leave information posted about that and whatever follow-ups we do here.
Okay, no, I think that's great because I think there's a lot of people, even those in the audience who are attending and those who are going to be listening to the recording, who I think would find that valuable because they may have content that they want to share about either research or tools that they're using. They can develop courses on that and get that out there for other teachers and students to use, which I think is just a remarkable thing to do. And I think it's going to be helpful for a lot of different people. Now, we are in a little bit different view now, as you can see. If you have any questions about anything for any of these panelists, we've got just about 10 minutes left. So now is a good time to start asking those questions in the chat. Put those in there. We'll try to answer those as those come in. For now, I want to just take a minute and if we have a question come in, then we're going to take the time to answer that. But I did want to have each person talk a little bit about some of the things that they want to bring to the table here coming up in some of these next calls, and places that they can get more information about each one of you and the things that you have done and can do to help educators and students alike. So Phil, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Rob, and great job, Samuel and Eric, talking about the future and unbelievable personalization, customization for the individual. Imagine if you were 10, 11, 12, and the course was built for you based on your interest. And no matter how much physics is in soccer, I'm not signing up to that physics course. So the concept is educating the students on things they're interested in, motivated, and then it's really, what's the student's motivations and needs, learning needs? What's the teacher's requirements and needs? Teachers want students who are eager and excited about their course. And so why isn't it that we're not coordinating the students who are interested and eager in learning from that specific teacher? Right now, we've got walls. Those walls are coming down. And imagine if we're matching students with teachers. And those teachers love those students. The students love the teachers. What a great world this would be. Because now the synergies is going up. Because now the students are engaged in that teacher's content that they've developed personally because they like their learning style. And they are adapting to that. So it's really powerful about matching the individual student with the respective teacher. So this is powerful. And imagine it's not just like we talk about relevance, information relevance about what is it that they're learning. Okay, so bring in the parents. What are the parents' professional development goals for their kids? What are those life skills? What's the nutrition? What's the health components of valuable information? Maybe they don't like it, but as a parent, you know they want to learn it, that you want them to know better. They're not going to be excited about learning about all the great things that you want them to learn, but it's something that you could put forward because they're younger than 18, and now you're pushing this content. And oh my goodness, is homeschooling going to be more relevant? Because now there's these pods of homeschoolers that are now in line associated with these groups. They're already starting. They're already developing these programs for their own kids. It's time to get on board, educators, to create a better environment than a homeschooling environment. That's your competition. Your competition is that you've got an entire building of teachers and faculty. What's the value they're bringing? And guess what? We're competing against entertainment. We're competing against phones. How extraordinary engaging is the material that you're building and developing? And look at this. Are you going to get the feedback from the students to learn and understand what they're learning and what they're not learning? And are you adapting to those improvements that Samuel was mentioning about providing incredible content for them that they're absorbing and learning based on visual information and all the styles that they have? This is a game changer for life. Educating people on what they really need to learn, what their parents would like them to learn, all in one package. It's extraordinary. This is an incredible transformation of education like no other. And we have to thank technology for making this possible, because they weren't waiting. They were constantly in the forefront of pushing that envelope. Educators, you didn't push the envelope. You're in wait mode. You're in assessment. You're in no risk mode. Well, guess what? It's time to engage with incredible technology to accomplish the goals of educating students in an entertaining, interesting way and motivating, as the teachers are excited about having these students come to their interactive class, because we have to have that connection. It's not just videos. It is that two-way communication between students and teachers to up their game of really exciting material and questions to get them so motivated about education. Like, how many students, like, there's no metrics associated with how many students are thriving in school. Do you ever see that report card at every school to understand which ones are socially thriving, which ones are academically thriving, how many students really want to be there? That is a problem. Attendance is down, folks. Attendance is down, folks. And guess what? They don't feel like there's any added value. They could just look online. Now you're selling to the parents because the parents are letting them stay home. They have access to all this information. Education's got to revisit what they're doing, and we've got to embrace technology to make it much more interesting and entertaining and accomplish so many students' goals of what it is that they'd like to do for the next, 30 years, 40 years. Thank you.
And the ability to, like we've been talking about, create material that's particularly for particular students and their needs and what they're interested in. So AI, Jane, let's like say we just have a few minutes left above. I mean, if we end up going over, I apologize, but we'll try to get as close to this 2 hour, but there's just so much information here, so many things that we still haven't even covered. So please, if you are listening or watching the recording, look for the links that are going to be coming out, as we're going to have more events going forward with more education, more information. We just barely scratched the surface here. We're going to go away from why to how, and we're going to start bringing that information to you guys. So make sure that you are there and available for that, and you're watching for that. So AI, Jane, talk a little bit about any last thoughts that you have. Just take a minute maybe, and just give us your final thoughts and where people can learn more about tools for students.
Certainly. So it's kind of funny because looking at the chat, I'm looking at Mohammed's comment, and it's really difficult because I'm just like chomping at the bit to even just open up this dialogue and have this conversation. And there's so many brilliant people on here. There's just not enough time in one session. So that's what's going to be great about moving forward into all these next sessions. We can really break down a lot of this information. But there's so many tools, and that's the point, is we're going so far beyond things like ChatGPT. There's so many tools that if I'm going into a classroom, if I'm not doing online learning and I'm in a classroom, I can use my watch, I can use my phone, I can use a laptop, I can use whatever piece of technology I have available to me, because everything's so integrated now, to even record what a professor's stating. So if I record a whole conversation or a whole lecture of this course, it could be 2 hours long. I can actually have it transcribe this for me. I can have it put into notes for me. I can have it in an outline format. I can pick certain pieces of whatever I need to accomplish whatever assignments I'm going to be doing. To the point, that Mohammed was making on here. Absolutely, I completely understand even the concern about, like the ethics here. And, the truth is, like, and the fact is, AI and technology remains and is only going to advance. So how do we utilize this for the best interests of humanity in general, right? So, for example, if I sit in a class and I get all the information I need, I get all the note taking I need, and now I'm ready to start whatever assignments I am supposed to be completing. The end goal is to really ascertain all the knowledge I need, but I can streamline this process now. And I can go in and I can do some research and I can find, say, this could be, I'm not in the medical field, but let's just say you're a doctor and you want to go and get some research, you're researching and you want, like, now I have to, whether it's argue, or I have to agree with whatever I'm going to be doing with whatever assignment here. I'm trying to take it to the next level. That's the whole point of research, right? Is we're trying to research, we're going to try to find like the best outcome at the end. Now I can use technology and I could use what research has come before me and I can put that into AI and I can actually have it dissect everything down and I can have it come up with arguable points, lots of different things. But I could also pair that with what I've been taught in the class. And I can take that, all the information that's been provided to me, put it all, wrap it up into a nice present, put a bow on it, stick it into AI and have it produce some results. And then I can actually start my project, right? So there's a lot of ways of doing this. And that's where we get into the gray area of what is ethical, what's not ethical, and all that. And that's where I get into, like, with the courses that we've developed, what is available, what is not available for professors to be able to see, okay, this is what you can do. You can, if I can sit and do a lecture and I don't, I don't want the students to have, the ability to just transcribe everything I said. Or you go, you know what, like, I'm wasting my breath. Let me give you everything you need to know on a silver platter. But now I want you to take this and I want you to, and then incorporate XYZ, so there is so much that can be done with the technology. And that's what I hope that we move into moving forward, for everybody who's interested in this, is how can we get, at the end of the day, all the information we need and kind of remove the minutia out of it and get the nuts and the bolts, and let's get all the information in a, like, basically all wrapped up into a present and be able to serve that on a silver platter and be better than, and produce better results than whatever has been produced before. And that's utilizing so much information out there that's, kind of collectively, lots of brains have been doing lots of research, right? So if we incorporate all of these different brains, and there's ways to do it, that doesn't mean type something into ChatGPT and have it spit out some, baloney. That's actually pulling the actual research documents and having it go through those documents and challenging those and up the ante on those. Like, that's what I think we really need to be doing. So I would love to get more into Mohammed's conversation, and I think that would be one of those good topics moving forward.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to see that coming forward. And then you are going to be releasing your program that educators and students can go in and learn more about these tools. That's going to be exciting. So make sure that you guys are watching out for that coming forward. Samuel, final thoughts and any thing that you want to share with participants, or how to get more in touch with you, and et cetera, et cetera. It's time to start wrapping this up, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
I think someone said, I think it was Phil, said we could have gone for 6 hours on this. No doubt, Phil. Very easily could have done that. That's why we're going to have to break this up and do this again. So look forward to that. Samuel.
Well, just real quick, I want to say, I'm going to put it in the chat here. I have an AI in ADDIE series coming up. The first introduction to AI in ADDIE. That's the link in there that goes to the LinkedIn event page. That one's free. And then I have a 5-part series going through the summer where we're going to look at AI in each step of the ADDIE process. And we're talking about specific tools, techniques. It's more of like a hands-on workshop, 5 90-minute workshops going through the summer to help instructional designers and teachers prepare for the upcoming school year. So you can see how to use it for not just developing content, of course, but for assessing learning, helping with the implementation, and in that first step of analyzing learner characteristics and needs. So I put that link in there, and you can feel free to connect with me on, it's mirrored. So that one is LinkedIn. And then this one here goes to our main webpage, and head over to the events page on there, and you can see our upcoming events, including that AI and Addy series. But this has been great. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Oh, you bet. Thank you. Eric.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. Obviously, check out our website as well for Innovate AI. We have a variety of different trainings that we do with education institutions, K-12, higher ed, for faculty, teachers, administrators, leaders that are looking at building things in. And of course, as Samuel mentioned, if you are building curriculum or want to empower your teachers to be able to do that, we can accelerate that process significantly, and a lot of other things we've done with bots and things like that. But I think the bottom line, one takeaway is you want to be competitive. You want to improve your efficiency. You want to understand and not be left behind. And AI is really an opportunity for you to foster innovation. Of course, most schools are struggling with how to implement AI and what does that look like. And as a culture change agent in the past, that's something I love doing in helping organizations figure out what does that look like? How do you implement it effectively with tailored training, continuous learning, leadership development, cross-functionally, what does that look like? And of course, making sure you have the guardrails, the policies, the procedures, the ethical things that you're considering. So, if anything, I implore you for your own sake to invest in your own AI education, and to the degree that you're in a position to bring that to your students, to others in your organization, to implement sort of that process, it's going to be beneficial. And, promoting AI tools is going to be key for the future, and is really learning how to learn. And this is something we need to learn about. So thank you for the opportunity to connect. Look forward to future opportunities to continue the dialogue. And you can certainly reach out also on our website and just schedule a discovery call. Say, here's what I'm interested. We'd love to be able to support you. So back to you, Rob.
Yeah, I was just typing in the comments. Make sure that you let everyone know about these courses coming up. And again, we'll send out links to your email address, just like the ones we've sent, as we start to come out with more tools and more ways to connect and more of the how-tos. So make sure that you're kind of watching for those. And again, invite friends, anyone who's either an educator or student who you feel like it can learn more through this, through these courses and through these connections. And we'll have these panelists back again. We'll talk more about what the future holds, how to make things better going forward. I think, Eric, you had talked when we had first talked to you about this, and kind of as a team, Eric, you had said, I really do want to try to change the future of education for the better. And I think as a group of people, especially those who are here today and those who are watching, you all have the ability to help us make that happen. So I'm really looking forward to working with all of you and having all of you join a group and working together on this. So any final thoughts anyone wants to put out there before we finish up?
I'd like to add my parting comments here. So if we look at everything again, it comes to being human. We need to make that connections. As a professor, or when I'm lecturing and everybody has their cameras off, right? You talk to all the little dots on Teams or whatever else, and you have no connection. When I'm in the classroom and lecturing and it's a hybrid mode, you have all of the students looking at their screens and not looking at you as the professor, and making no connection because they're making no eye connection. But at the same time, we have to look at AI. It is not going away. And if we look at how many schools are closing because they are failing to keep up, they can't engage students. We've got school avoidance at an all-time high. 8 million kids, high school down, are not attending school for 20 days or more in the year. They interviewed parents recently. Parents said, well, isn't school optional by high school, right? No, it's not. And so we've got all of these things we've got to look at. And if we continue to ignore what AI can do, and we don't get into this perils versus promise and put the emphasis on the promise, what's going to happen is we're going to continue to have more schools closing. Like a college in Massachusetts is closing next week with more to come. We're going to continue to see that enrollment cliff happening at college where we're already down 21% of students that should be there. And what's going to happen? We're going to go by the way of the VHS tape, right? Radio Shack and Blockbuster. And no one wants to become irrelevant. You can find me. My contact information is there. Check me out on LinkedIn or laurelyn@steris.io. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Anyone else? We're ready to wrap this up.
I would just like to add one quick thing. For anybody and everybody listening to this, please email rob@marketingai.com. Any questions, any concerns, any kind of, even if it's passionate feelings on this, you can be like, I absolutely hate AI and the trajectory of what I'm seeing here. And this just ticks me off to the left side of France that anybody's even going to use this. I don't care what your feelings are. I don't care what your thoughts are. Your opinions are valid. Your feelings are valid. This is something like this is new waters, and they're fairly muddy. So let's open up this dialogue. Ask questions. I would love to, I've been doing this for a very long time, and I would love to challenge your feelings, challenge your comments. I'd love for you to challenge me. I'd like to be able to open up this dialogue and help everybody learn how to implement this. And if there's something that you could bring to the table just by your questions or your comments, I would love to even explore those. I think that this is 100% where we're going in our future. And I think that we can make huge impacts and changes. And it takes everybody collectively to do that. So please email Rob for any questions, comments, feelings along on this topic so we can revisit this in our future sessions.
Yeah, and I just dropped a link for a Facebook group that we've started. You'll find Laura Lynn in there, and Samuel and Eric, and so we invite you to join that if you haven't already, and we'll try to keep you updated and posted there as well. So you'll find more information there from all the different panelists. But thank you all so much for joining us today. It was so nice to see you on here, and thanks for the feedback and the questions and the positive thoughts that you've generated and given. And I really hope that it's been worth your time. Please let other people know about this going forward. There really is an opportunity here to change things for the better long term for our students, for our teachers. And with the power of AI, we can really start to help kids and students, teachers. It doesn't matter what age you are and how you are working in the school system, either as a student, teacher, administrator, but there are going to be a lot of great things to come here. So please stay tuned, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next event. We will keep you posted. Look forward. You can join the Facebook group, also check your emails regularly, and make sure that we are not going to your spam folder, because if you see us there, you need to make sure you put us as a contact so we can keep you informed. All right, thank you so much, everyone. We'll go ahead and end this for today, and we look forward to seeing you here in the very near future.
Thank you all. Bye.